Hey everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. Today we're going to do another episode of the Breaking Down Songs series, the place where we take a closer look at some of my favorite songs from all kinds of different bands, and analyze the lyrics, because when we do that, we gain a deeper appreciation for the music we listen to. If there's a specific band you guys want me to talk about in a future video, please let me know in the comments section down below. I'll check your feedback. If I like the band and I'm pretty familiar with their discography, I'll probably talk about them. So today we're going to talk about my second favorite band right behind Def Leppard, 3 Days Grace. Absolutely adore them. I love them more than most people. So, getting into 3 Days Grace, 3 Days Grace can be split up into two different eras. One with lead singer Adam Gontier, then with lead singer Matt Walst. They have two different lead singers, as I'm sure 3 Days Grace fans will know. Adam left the band in 2013 because he was just getting tired of the direction the band was heading. He felt like that 3 Days Grace only cared about making money, not about writing genuine songs that were meaningful, that were related to their personal experiences. He felt like the band was losing that depth, so he wanted out of there. So when Adam left, I feel like the spark of the band was gone, and they were never able to completely replace that void after he left. Not to discount the other members, but when you get a new lead singer, the whole identity of the band changes. The band isn't the same anymore. That's the most notable piece of the band, so you could tell 3 Days Grace wasn't the same after Adam left. So I noticed right away on their albums after Adam left, Human and Outsider, I quickly realized that the lyrics had gone way downhill since then. I think Adam was a big reason for that, because he was known for writing lyrics that were relatable to him, that stemmed from his personal experiences. Compared to the newer material, it felt like those songs off Human and Outsider were more shallow, generic, and repetitive. That was the main problem I had with the newer 3 Days Grace songs. I couldn't get into them as much because of the lyrics. They felt too repetitive, like they had run out of ideas. So that bothered me. It caused a lot of tension in the fan base once Adam left. He departed the band, and some fans decided not to listen to 3 Days Grace anymore. I gave them a chance, and I wasn't a big fan of the way Matt's voice sounded compared to Adam. His voice isn't bad, it's just Adam sang with a lot more emotion in his voice. Felt like every word was intentional. So that's the main complaint I have about Matt, but I don't want to dwell on this subject for too long because it's been 7 years since 3 Days Grace got a new lead singer, so we should all move on at this point, not hold any resentment toward any of the band members. They all went their separate ways because they felt that was the best option for them at the time. Things weren't going good for them, so they had to move on. They have done that, so we should too. You gotta pick a side. You can either listen to 3 Days Grace with Matt Walst if you're a fan of Matt Walst, or you can go listen to Adam's band, Saint Asonia. Or if you like both, you can listen to both. There's nothing wrong with that either. Personally, I've always been a bigger fan of Adam than Matt. I don't dislike Matt, I just think he's okay. An average singer compared to Adam, so I just wanted to explain that real quick. But enough of that. Let's get into my favorite song from my top 5 3 Days Grace albums. There have only been 6. So, from the Outsider album, at the bottom of the pile, at number 5 from the Outsider album, I picked The Abyss. That's the main difference I notice with the later 3 Days Grace albums. Before, with the 4 albums they released, with Adam as their lead singer, I was obsessed with almost every track on the album. Even the songs that I didn't like as much, I still liked a lot. Even the songs I wasn't completely in love with, I still found something to like about them. However, with the later albums like Human and Outsider, I only liked about half of the songs off those records. The rest were forgettable for me. I only needed to hear them once, then I was done. I didn't want to come back to it again. So, however, The Abyss kept my attention. It was a solid song. Got some screaming in there. You got some better lyrics compared to the other songs, so The Abyss holds its own. It sounds like a genuine 3 Days Grace song. You could tell with Outsider that Matt developed a lot more confidence in his singing, so I think that carried over to the lyrics, made them feel more believable. So, gotta give him credit for that. Next up, on my 4th favorite 3 Days Grace album, Transit of Venus, their last with Adam, I picked, what else? Chalk Outline. One of the all-time greats. Chalk Outline is a killer song. Absolutely love it. Has that classic 3 Days Grace format. The verses are lighter, kind of soft, just pedaling along on a flat surface. Then you reach the chorus and all of a sudden things get amped up, more energetic, more intense, more in your face. So, Chalk Outline is a very memorable song. Great lyrics, great experimentation they use with the synthesizers, kind of trying something different. So, they did well with that song. Next up, at number 3, from their self-titled album, released back in 2003, I picked Wake Up, a song I appreciate quite a bit. Wake Up has this dazzling guitar riff on it. You immediately recognize it. It's an easy song to sing along. Wake Up is something that feels like, again, the lyrics are meant for you personally. It feels like the lyrics are being directed straight at you. So, I give major props to that song. I'm a huge fan of it. At number 2, we have the beloved 1X album. Some of you are probably going to be shocked that I didn't put 1X as my favorite album. I gotta be honest with you, there's not much difference between my top 4 favorite 3 Days Grace albums, all from the Adam era. They all hold a special spot in my heart, so this list feels subjective. I mean, it could change anytime. If you ask me at the end of this video, I might put 1X first. I don't know. I had a super hard time deciding. It took me hours to figure out how I was going to rank these albums, and then a long time to actually decide what my favorite song was off each album, then even longer to pick my absolute favorite. So, don't take this pick too seriously. It's just kind of a spur-of-the-moment decision, what I felt was better at the time. So, anyway, from 1X, I picked Let It Die. Song that doesn't get as much attention compared to the other tracks, but from back to front, front to back, all the way through, 1X is a masterpiece album. Definitely peak 3 Days Grace. It has every 3 Days Grace quality you've come to expect from a song. So, finally, at my top spot from the Life Starts Now album, I chose Bully. Bully feels like an extremely personal type of track, a very relatable tune, which is part of 3 Days Grace's charm. Their songs have an impact on you. They almost feels like they can look into a crystal ball and see what's going on in your life and write a song that matches whatever your circumstances are. Feels like they know you better than you know yourself sometimes. That's part of the appeal of this band. So Bully delivers a powerful message. So from those tracks, the one I ended up going with today is Let It Die. Just for today, but I almost every 3 Days Grace song I've come across, I have one reason or another to love it, so it didn't feel like any of the songs I picked were genuinely better than the others. Just found more things I could appreciate from them, whether it be the lyrics, the instrumentals, the vocals, all those things played an impact. So there wasn't much distinction between them. It was really close. So before we get into interpreting the lyrics on Let It Die, let's go over some background real quick on the 1X album. Fabulous 1X was released back in 2006, their second album. However, it wasn't a sophomore slump by any means. In fact, it sold 3 million copies in the US. Barry Stock joined the band for the first time. He took over guitar duties. He did an outstanding job there. Gave us a lot of classic riffs off that album, some of which I've learned to play in my spare time. Uses a lot of power chords, a lot of bar chords. Almost always drop D tuning. Became their standard. So, you may or may not know that Adam actually wrote many of the songs that eventually became part of this album while he was in rehab for trying to overcome a drug addiction. He was struggling with that, so while he was going through rehab, he started writing lyrics and just basically pulled out all the thoughts in his head and put them down on paper, then just let it out. I think that became therapeutic for him. It was a way to heal from the trauma he experienced. I think the music replaced the void that the drugs had satisfied before. It became a substitute for him. So this whole album was hauntingly attractive. It touched on some incredibly sad subjects, subjects that all of us have gone through at some point, whether it be depression, loneliness, or relationship issues, or anxiety, stress, all of that and more can be found here. So even though this album seemed like it was headed on a downward spiral constantly, felt like things were never going to get better, like once you reached rock bottom, everything was over, you should just give up. In fact, I think the whole message they wanted to get across in general with this album was that no matter how bad things get, there's always a glimmer of hope. You should never give up hope. You should always keep pushing forward with the hope that sooner or later things will improve. you'll find something in your life worth living for. Find a reason to hold on to your life. So even though that album will get you in a sad mood, it still gets more uplifting toward the end because it gives you an important lesson there. So let's move on to the lyrics themselves of Let It Die. By the way, I'll put a link to Let It Die in the description if you want to listen to it after this video. Go ahead. So keep in mind that this is just my opinion of the lyrics. My opinion might be different from yours. That's fine. We all hear these songs differently. All the 3 Days Grace members have said in interviews many times that they want these songs to be interpreted differently depending on the fan. There's no be-all or end-all explanation for these lyrics. The song means what it means to you. So this is what it means to me. If you don't agree with that, that's okay. So here we go, kicking off things with verse 1. We had fire in our eyes in the beginning. I never felt so alive in the beginning. You blame me, but verses are actually pretty short, so this won't take long. To me, verse 1 symbolizes where you're looking back on a previous relationship. You're in the future, but you're reminiscing. During that time, he or she is reflecting on a spontaneous type of relationship, or it might be a long-term relationship. I'm not sure. Could be either one. But either way, this relationship started out great. Things were going fantastic for them. The couple formed a strong bond with each other. They felt like they had found their soulmate, their twin flame. They became happier than ever. But then, all of a sudden, a fight ensued. Some kind of disagreement tore them apart. As a result, the relationship quickly went south. Things fell apart, and they blame each other. They won't admit who's at fault. They just blame each other. They think, it's not my fault, it's your fault. Neither of them want to admit that they're wrong. So, playing the blame game. Then we get to the bridge, which says, it's not fair when you say that I didn't try. I just don't want to hear it anymore. Here with the bridge, basically the bridge just says that I don't deserve all the blame. All the responsibility shouldn't be on my shoulders. You gotta take responsibility too. He's tired of fighting with them. He just wants to be left alone. Just drop the subject. Just stop bothering me. Just tired of dealing with the constant fighting. Then we get to the chorus, which goes, I swear I never meant to let it die. I just don't care about you anymore. It's not fair when you say that I didn't try. I just don't care about you anymore. So the chorus, to me, means that they broke up. Eventually the problems became so terrible they had no other choice except to split up and go their separate ways. So what he's trying to say, excuse me, is that over time his feelings faded. That's the rationale he wants to use. That he simply lost interest in her. He had no control over that. He didn't want to fall out of love with her, but he did. Just because. So he wants her to accept that, but she won't. She still thinks it's his fault, even though he says, look, I didn't mean to lose feelings for you. It just happened. It was outside of my control. There was nothing I could do about it. I'm sorry, but you need to let it go. So then we get to verse 2, verse 2 says, "We had time on our side in the beginning. We had nothing to hide in the beginning. You blame me, but..." So pretty much the same as verse 1. Verse 2 gives us another flashback, going back to the glory days when things were fine. There was nothing to worry about. They were happy together. They made plans with each other, completely trusted each other. Everything was intact. There weren't any major disagreements between them. Then all of a sudden, everything changed, and they became each other's worst enemies. So then we get back to the bridge again, then the chorus, then the bridge, then the chorus one more time, then finally the outro. So I won't read over all that again, because it matches what I already said. But all of that just reinforces the point about how he's done completely. He doesn't want anything to do with her. Just wants to move on, make a fresh start his life over. As time goes on, he grows more convinced that getting away is a necessary thing to do for his well-being. So, now that we've discussed the lyrics, let's move on to the mood. When you listen to Let It Die, what kind of emotions does it evoke? Well, I think the lyrics were sung with such conviction. It felt like Adam believed every word he sang. He might have been speaking from personal experience. Maybe this event really happened to him. It probably did, because if you're a 3 Days Grace fan, you know he always tried to write from his heart about whatever events were going on in his life. So this very well might have happened with one of his past relationships. So that probably made it easier for him to sing these lyrics and actually mean them. So with that, you almost can't help but take his side in the song. At least that's the way it felt for me. It felt like he was so sure about what he was singing. He meant every word, so you believed he was telling the truth. He wasn't making it up for sympathy or anything like that. He actually meant it. He was telling the truth. So it almost feels like the song makes you pick a side. His side or her side. Who's to blame? So that's what I got out of it. Now on to the most memorable line from the song. I picked, "I just don't care about you anymore." You hear that line repeated numerous times, for a good reason. It basically sums up his feelings about the situation and how he's taking a stance against her. Now let's move on to some themes that I noticed. Well, the most obvious one that stands out would be stubbornness. Quality some people have more than others. You see plenty of it in this song. About sticking to a belief that you have, something that you hold dear. You firmly believe in what you think is right. You trust your instincts. So you're not caving in under pressure. You don't change your opinion at the drop of a hat. You stay consistent with your opinion. So you trust it. So you see that here. He never backs down from what he believes. He keeps saying over and over, "I just don't care about you anymore." Maintaining his innocence. I never meant to let it die. He never strays from that. stays on the same path the whole time. So that's the first theme. The next theme is about some key areas to pay attention to in a relationship if you want it to be successful. Trust happens to be a major factor. You gotta have trust in there for the relationship to thrive. And both people in the relationship have to be willing to put forward trust for things to work out. If you don't have that, then the relationship crumbles. So the next thing I noticed was the sheer amount of honesty on display here. Honesty goes a long way. It takes courage to admit things that might upset other people. It's hard to get those feelings out there, to admit something when you're afraid of a reaction. So I admire in the song how it took a tremendous amount of bravery to say that he didn't love her anymore. He knew that would break her heart, that would make her turn against him, but he felt like it was the right thing to do, to let her know the truth. So now let's move on to the strengths and weaknesses of Let It Die. Well, one strength, this can probably go across the board with every 3 Days Grace song, the amount of relatability each song has. That has always been the core of 3 Days Grace, being able to write songs that have an impact on fans, that affect them in a deep way. Songs that fans will look at and say, I've been through that. I know how that feels. So that's why 3 Days Grace has obtained such a massive following over the years. The relatability. Then you have the diversity Adam uses with his vocals to match the situation of the song. He's extremely adaptable. He can take his voice and make it soft or make it raspy, depending on what emotion he wants you to understand. So that's a highlight by far. Next up, we got the way the lyrics flow. They flow in a spectacular fashion. The lyrics explain pretty clearly everything that transpires in the song. Feels like a story set up. You follow along from the verse through the chorus, then the next verse, etc. Feels like it's arranged in a way that makes sense, that all goes together well. So next up, the next strength would be how the instrumentals do their part to carry the weight. They support Adam's voice. Barry, Brad, Neil, they deserve credit here too, because it's not all about the voice. Even though I've been bragging about Adam's voice the whole time, the instruments still matter too. I'm not taking anything away from them. I appreciate the other band members' efforts too. Next up, the final theme happens to be the moral of the song, the lesson that it wants you to learn. Basically how in the song, whether it be Adam or someone else, they tried to do the right thing for him and his lover. He didn't want to be selfish about his beliefs. He felt like he owed them an explanation. He wasn't going to leave them empty-handed. He wanted the truth to get out there. Even though it would be difficult, it was what was necessary. So now the only weakness that I am going to point out about Let It Die is the chorus seemed lopsided. What I mean by that is, felt like, excuse me, felt like the verses could have used more length to them. Felt like the chorus, the bridge and the chorus occupied the majority of the song. I don't think there was enough substance in the verses. Probably could have thrown in a few extra lines. So that's the only minor gripe I have about Let It Die. Other than that, it was great. It was a really good song. But if they threw in a little more detail, it might have put the song on the next level, might have elevated it even higher than it already was. So finally, on a scale of 1 to 10, how replayable is this song? After you listen to Let It Die, how often are you going to want to come back to it, listen to it again? Well, I gave it a perfect 10 out of 10. Because to me, this song embodies everything 3 Days Grace wanted to be. It was personal, deep, it had legit lyrics that told a story. It affected the fans in a major way. All the pieces were there, so there's not much to complain about with this song at all. So, that takes us to the end of the video. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Until then, rock on.